everybody, much peace to you and welcome. Today I want to speak about the difference between your ego and your higher self and how to connect more to your higher self and also integrate the ego, because I believe that the ego also has to be integrated sometimes, Now, before starting, if you're new to the YouTube channel, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and if you wish to be part of my spiritual podcast called Kindly Awakening, feel free to send me a message. Also, if you wish to work with me on a one-on-one level and get to know your spiritual side in a deeper and more advanced way, feel free to contact me at my Facebook address in the description below. Now, the ego, the ego is not your amigo, but it has to be integrated, it has to be accepted. The ego is your identity. It mostly happens in the mental plane, it mostly happens as thoughts. It mostly happens as thoughts, It is about separation. It may be about the third dimensional level of consciousness. But what I've seen in my own journey was the fact that separation is actually an illusion. There is no separation. Everything is actually one energy, one consciousness. And what I've seen is the fact that my higher self is actually the consciousness that is represented by oneness. It is the consciousness that is represented by peace, harmony, love, and source energy. So what I've seen is the fact that the more that I was connected with source energy and source consciousness, was the more that I was actually connected with my higher self. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. And sometimes I operate from the ego. Sometimes I operate from anger, maybe. Sometimes I operate from separation. Sometimes I'm not perfect. But what I've seen is the fact that the more that I love myself, and the more that I integrate my imperfections, the more that I love my flaws, is the more that I step into my higher self. So the higher self is the source self. The higher self is the energy that goes beyond separation and beyond the identity. The ego is actually the identity. It may be reflected by programs. It may be reflected by limiting belief systems. It may be reflected by limitation. And what I've seen is the fact that it's also okay to sometimes experience the ego. And the ego has to be integrated. The darkness has to be integrated, but it doesn't have to be expressed out there, because now you create resistance. Now you create suffering. Now you create fights and struggles, And what I've seen is the fact that the more that I listen to my intuition, is the more that I connect with my higher self. Now, the ego is about obligation. Whenever you feel a thought that is reflected by obligation, is the more that you operate from the ego. And also the ego is about the past. The ego is about resentment. The ego is actually suffering, guys, The ego is in pain. But the higher self is about letting go. So my suggestion is try as much as possible to begin to let go a bit more and be grateful with where you are and what you have and what has happened in your past. Now, if you really want to connect to your higher self, you gotta begin to trust more. You gotta begin to trust more. You gotta begin to be in vibrational alignment with your heart space and your intuition. Because what I've seen is the fact that if I alchemize my experiences, and if I accept certain experiences, if I accept myself unconditionally, then I get to actually release resistance and I get to connect with my higher self. And really, the higher self is your true authentic self. It is the self that is actually operating from peace, harmony, and love. Now, the ego is about resistance. The ego is about separation. And yes, sometimes you have to integrate your ego because you're not perfect. You're not perfect. And you have to really be accepting, You have to be accepting. And the ego is operating from fear most of the times, because the ego feels that it's not safe and it feels like it wants to protect you, The ego feels that it's not safe, and when you operate from the ego, it feels like you want to protect yourself. But the higher self is about letting go, The higher self is about acceptance. The higher self is about opening the heart to infinite possibilities, And what I've seen in myself is the fact that sometimes I was operating from the ego, and I accept those experiences, even if I try to hurt others in those experiences. You know, I accept them, and I realized that I was actually operating from the ego. But what I've seen is the fact that I was only doing those things because I wasn't listening to my true authentic self, which is actually my higher self, which is actually my best version. Okay, so yeah guys, the higher self is the self that is operating from a higher vibrational level of consciousness. You know, it is the self that is your best version. It is the self that is operating from the heart. Okay, the ego is about the lower vibrational states of consciousness. Okay, the ego is about low states of consciousness. The ego is about separation. But you know, maybe the universe is also separated from you for you to actually learn what oneness is, you know. So it's not perfect, and when you don't expect perfection, you also increase the chance for you to actually experience perfection, you know. So when you realize that things are perfect in their imperfection, you operate from perfection. Okay, so guys, yeah, realize that your higher self wouldn't break your free will, and the higher self is mostly operating from love, you know. And you are that higher self. You are that higher self. You are that love frequency. You are that higher vibrational energy. You are the consciousness that is represented by oneness. And what I've seen is the fact that the moment that I try to hurt another, I was actually hurting myself. Okay, so realize that whatever you do onto others, you actually do onto yourself, because this is actually the principle of cause and effect. What you project out there will be projected back onto yourself. So my suggestion is get to accept yourself, you know, get to accept yourself and get to take responsibility. I've seen that the higher self is also about responsibility. How do you choose to respond to certain things? Do you choose to react because that is the ego, or do you choose to respond? Okay, when you respond, you actually understand. When you react, you are in resistance. So my suggestion is open your heart to the experience that you're having right now, and don't have regrets about your past. Okay, don't have regrets, don't have resentment. Just accept what happened, accept yourself, because that is how to connect with your true higher self. Okay, so my suggestion is get to take things slowly and get to love yourself in the process. This is how to leave your ego behind, or integrate your ego, whatever you want to call it. Get to accept, because I believe that with acceptance you actually release the resistance. Okay, with acceptance you increase the frequency. With acceptance you begin to love more. And what I've seen is the fact that love is actually all that there is. Everything else is an illusion. Okay, the hate that you have been experiencing is still love. You know, the anger that you have been experiencing is still love. The failure that you have been experiencing is still love. And the higher self is about vibrational alignment. Get to be in alignment with your true authentic version, and you will actually leave the ego behind or integrate it, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so hey guys, this is today's message about the difference between your ego and your higher self. Realize that of course the ego has to be integrated. You know, we're not perfect, and we all have egos, we all have identities, we all have our human masks, you know, but in essence we are actually far deeper than that. We are more than our identity, we are more than our projections, we are more than our egos. Okay, we are more than our limitations. We're actually the universe experiencing itself as a human being. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and this was today's message about the difference between the ego and the higher self. I love you so much, and I have taken a break from doing videos because I felt that I needed to reflect a bit more on my message. I needed to reflect a bit more on my actions. I needed to reflect a bit more on my states of consciousness. I also got a cold and my lungs hurt a bit, but that's okay because we're going through it and we are going to actually win the game. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and like always, see you on what's coming up next. Namaste to you, and much peace, love and harmony to you guys. Bye bye.